Dear students, your visual rhetoric assignment entails designing and composing a brochure. The information for the assignment appears on page 203, assignment 6.19, mosaic case. Your job is to design a brochure on preventing sexual harassment. In this assignment, you are presented with background information and then information on sexual harassment and the non-discrimination and sexual harassment policy for which you're going to design and compose the brochure. When you think in terms of designing a brochure, you want to make sure that you pay close attention to the information in Chapter 6. And I'm just going to briefly go over some of the highlights of this information. So you want to make sure that you determine your objectives. As you read through the information on sexual harassment, you'll notice that the information is very dense. There is much information here. So your job is to think in terms of creating a central theme. Now, sexual harassment is a very broad topic, so you want to condense that topic into a central theme. So what in particular do you want to focus on for the brochure? And that's kind of your approach. This is the approach that you should take. Think in terms as well of the background information that's presented to you about the company and the concern or the concerns of the company as expressed in the case. Identify your target audiences. Identify again your central selling point or your main theme. And choose, imagine what you want the project to be. Identify objections, brainstorm ways to deal with them. You want to think in terms of putting yourself in your reader's shoes, and remember audience analysis. So put yourself in your reader's shoes and think in terms of what objections do you think your audience would have, and then make sure you counter those objections in the brochure. You want to draft the text to see how much space it takes. Remember that this is a 6-panel brochure, and you are going to use landscape. So, in other words, 11 by 8.5. So you have side 1 and side 2. Make sure that you refer to page 178 for the format of a brochure. Now, you know, the side here, side 1, side 2, think in terms of, for you, page 1, page 2. So if I were to print your brochure and then print the sides so that they're both you know, only on one page. Now if I were to fold the brochure, this is the layout that I should see. So you want to make sure that you place the information according to side 1 and side 2. You want to make sure that you use visuals to accompany the text. Make sure that your visuals are professional. I highly recommend that you use photographs instead of clip art. You want to make sure that the visuals that you use are not suggestive in any way or sexual in any way, because again, you're writing about sexual harassment, preventing sexual harassment. So you want to make sure that your visuals are ethical. Experiment with different layouts as far as where you would place information. And of course, make sure that every choice is a conscious one, so think in terms of color, font, layout, paper. Remember the rules of fonts. You want to make sure, again, the choice is ethical. You don't want to choose a font that's too big just so that you're taking up space. The best rule of thumb is for the text, the central text, use 11-point fonts. For the headings, the font can be a little larger, but however, it should not be any larger than 14-point fonts. So be professional, be ethical, be reasonable, use common sense when it comes to color, font, page layout. And of course, as you go through and you are proofreading the brochure, you want to make sure that the prose is polished and professional, and the graphics are as well. Here is the information that appears on page 178. So this is what I was referring to. So side 1, side 2, if I were to fold it, this would be how it would appear once it's folded. So make sure that you place information according to each panel. Okay, no more than 2 fonts. The font should be the same family, so to speak. So in other words, it should be a serif font. Serif font means with little extensions on each letter. Make sure that you use white space, but again, make sure that you are reasonable. Don't have gaps and think that, oh, this is white space when you just don't want to include information. So use common sense when it comes to that. Avoid italics and underlining. Avoid all capital letters because you're shouting at the reader if you do that. You should not have a reply coupon. Of course, that would not apply to this topic. All right, so when it comes to designing your brochure, these are the areas that you want to make sure that you think about, that you apply to the brochure. Very important when it comes to the text. Remember that you are paraphrasing the text. You are not going to type the information verbatim as it appears in the assignment. You're not going to do that, because if you do that, well, then you would be committing plagiarism, and of course then you would get an F on the paper, which will lead to an F in the class. So of course you're not going to do that. You are going to paraphrase, and even though you're paraphrasing, you still want to make sure that you cite the source, and the source that is used for the information appears in the assignment. So make sure that you use the appropriate source. And make this brochure your own. So even though the information is there, and the information is there to give you good background information, make sure that you consider this information and make the brochure your own. So take use a different approach to it. You don't necessarily have to use the information, all the information. Of course, you're not going to do that. You want to make sure that you take a central approach to it, a central theme to it. You want to think in terms of maybe adding a different flair to it. I'm trying to give you little hints here without giving you too much information, or giving you what you should do, what I think you should do. But make sure that it is professional, make sure that it is serious, but then you can also take a different approach so that your audience understands the importance of avoiding sexual harassment and non-discriminatory practices in business. Okay, so once again, if you have any questions, make sure that you contact me. But this is a very important business topic. Even though there are laws on the books to prevent it, unfortunately it still happens in business. So this is just another way for you to learn about avoiding sexual harassment and to get information to your audience, perhaps in a different way, so that your audience really understands the importance of this topic.